Hello everyone and welcome to the Chrissy B Show. So today we're going to be discussing discrimination and stigma, which comes in many forms. But today especially we're going to be talking about discrimination against people with mental health issues. Now, for some of you who do have depression and you know how difficult it is to deal with it, you'll be aware that every activity in life seems like a tremendous task. And then you've got on top of that, you have the fear of discrimination, and it can actually stop you from getting the help that you need. Now, according to the Mental Health Foundation, 71% of those with depression actively wish to conceal their depression from other people. And that, of course, means not getting the treatment that and could lead to the problem becoming even worse. So today we'll be speaking to Maria Asemenah on the options you have with your employer if you are suffering from a mental illness. And also I'll be speaking to Coach Chris Brown later on, and we're going to be talking about what you can do if you're feeling down because you have been discriminated against. But first we're going to go to the news with Helena, and we'll be discussing discrimination from a bit of a different angle. Helena, how are you?
Yeah, I'm very well, thank you. Good to see you, Chrissy.
Good to see you too.
So today we've got International Women's Day that's coming up in the next couple of days.
And obviously women have been discriminated against a lot in the past.
Years and years.
Actually, I think even nowadays.
Yeah, I think secretly.
It happens.
The Madonna thing, you know, falling down the steps and all the stigma that happened with that, and they were talking about her age. Anyway, forget about that. So each year it's celebrated on March the 8th since 1911, and we celebrate the success of women, so the achievements. And I've got a list of people that have done a lot, that I think have done it. In fact, there's masses of people to talk about. But starting, actually, somebody with inspiration is Emmeline Pankhurst, who fought with her husband in the late 1800s for the right to vote and the rights for women. And she formed the suffragettes with her daughters. And it worked because women got the vote. Unfortunately, she didn't live to see that, but it was the fight. You know, they fought for what they thought was right, and it brought things along. So that's pretty
it's
good.
Like when we talk about it today, it seems like such a normal thing. You know, we're able to vote and everything. But imagine fighting for something back then when it didn't exist.
Exactly.
Imagine how hard it was and the opposition.
So strong, and the fighting spirit, really. And that's something not to let go of today. You know, just in our normal lives, to fight for what we believe in is really, really important.
It just takes one to start it all, doesn't it?
It does, it does. And it can be something tiny, it can be the smallest of things. I mean, there's that little, I don't know, do you know the starfish story? And there was an elderly writer walking to the sea, and there were all these starfish on the sand, and there was a little boy who was desperately trying to throw them back into the sea to obviously keep them alive. And the old man said, you know, what are you doing? You know, you're wasting your time. And he said, you know, I'm helping this one. And it's a lot. It's just small steps, and it means a lot.
I mean, that was mass discrimination, wasn't it? With no woman, not starfish, sorry. I was talking about the women not being able to vote.
That's silly, but it's the whole. I mean, that's completely discrimination, of course.
My mind was still on the.
But it's just good to just do small things. You know, some of these people that we're talking about have achieved huge things, but you don't have to achieve these massive things. It's just small things.
Yeah, you make a difference in your own way, even in your own vicinity, in your own family, in your own community.
Yeah, absolutely. Marie Curie was a great success, and she was born in Poland. She actually couldn't study there. She desperately wanted to study medicine and various things, and she moved to France in order to do it. And that was like in the late 1800s. So to do that in those times, but she was basically discovered the theory of radioactivity, and in those times, for a woman to achieve that was amazing. And obviously in cancer prevention and things like that, it's a huge thing. And she won, I think, a couple of Nobel Prizes, and I think was the first woman to win them. So amazing, again, another huge success. Actually, moving on to something else as well, which was obviously she couldn't study in Poland, so she moved to France to do it. But moving on to another young lady who's more of a modern figure, Malala Yousafzai. Is that right? Yousafzai? I always get it wrong. Do you know who I mean? Do you know who I mean? But she's only 17 now, but she was basically, she was the young lady who was shot. Oh
yes, I remember.
And she basically wants all girls to have an education, and the Taliban sort of took over, and she was talking to the BBC from a young age, sort of sharing to everyone how bad it was. I mean, so brave, incredibly brave. She was doing it under a pseudonym, but they found out who she was. But still now, she got through that, she survived, and she's just a huge figure.
Yeah.
I mean, she has obviously won the Nobel Prize. I think she's the youngest girl to ever win it. But I just think amazing.
Yeah,
and she's an inspiration really for young people as well,
yeah.
to again go out and try and achieve what you want to do. So amazing. Oprah Winfrey, who we love, you know, absolutely great. She had a sort of sad life, but now is a real generous philanthropist and helps people with mental health and various things. I mean, she's an amazing figure. I've just got this long list. List of people. I actually wanted to add my mum in there in a way.
Oh, come on, let's talk about our mums.
My mum as well, because she's completely selfless. And I think she's great. Again, you know, obviously she's not...
You've got to give her a shout out now, Helen. I wish I could. There's a camera over there.
Thank you. She's lovely. She's the most selfless person, really. Yeah. She helps everybody, everything. And I think that's amazing. I think, you know, also she teaches people a lot. And you know, I really do admire her for that.
Yeah, mums are special, aren't they? Well, if you've got a good mum, that is most.
Yeah, I know some people
the first woman that you normally have contact with.
Yes.
So, yeah, my mum's really... We're going to be doing a Mother's Day special very soon, coming up. Yeah.
Very nice.
Our show's next week, actually, so you can look out for that.
Yeah.
Be celebrating all things mums.
Definitely. Have we got any more time?
Yeah, we have, yeah.
Mother Teresa. Have to talk about Mother Teresa.
Yeah.
One of her quotes, "Not all of us can do great things, but we can do small things with great love." Again, that's everybody can do that. And she gave up her whole... Again, another Nobel Prize winner, but she gave up her life, really, as a missionary to look after the needy and the poor. And amazing, absolutely amazing. And then we can move on to Madonna, who's fantastic in her own right. You know, she's a mover and a shaker in the sort of music industry and sort of fought to get where she's got. But she's a strong woman and ambitious, and that's why she's got to where she is. Just amazing. And one of the others, even Audrey Hepburn, thinking about her, she was like a style icon. But one of the things that classy. One of her little sayings, which is really sweet, was the most important thing is to enjoy your life, to be happy, and that's all that matters, which is lovely. And she was great in films and everything, but she also helped out. She was a UNICEF ambassador, so spent the latter part of her life helping. So it
just goes to show that even if there are people that sort of do discriminate in some way, but if you're really determined and if you really want to go for something, nothing can stop you, really.
Yeah, you've got to go. And I just one other as well, Princess Diana. She was obviously, one of her quotes, everyone needs to be valued, everyone has the potential to give something back. And she, although she went through a lot of strife, she also gave a lot. And people related to her natural sympathy with the poor and sort of marginalised, and she really gave a lot. So I really didn't go on forever.
I know. Helen, I want just to ask you a question. Have you ever felt discriminated against for being a woman in any industry or anything?
I would say I've been quite lucky. I haven't been hugely discriminated against, but I would say in business as a woman, you tend to be discriminated against all the time, because in certain levels of business, it's always men, and men like to talk to men. I know this sounds general, but this is how I felt. And you do have to exert authority and push yourself in, whereas you shouldn't really have to do that. Yeah. You know, everyone's on the same level, but it just, that's really probably the only area.
So someone asked me that the other day, and I honestly couldn't see anything. Like, I couldn't pinpoint anything. No, not in stuff that I've done, unless it was happening and I didn't realise.
Possibly. Well, then you're lucky in a way.
Yeah, I suppose I didn't. But I haven't felt like I've been held back in any way.
No,
or you know,
I don't think everyone goes through that. But no,
I was speaking to someone that I know actually the other day, and a friend of mine, and she's her friend is like the secretary of the boss, so she gets to see all the salaries, and she goes back and she tells my friend, and it's like she's found out, basically my friend has found out that there's a huge difference in the same job that she's doing. I don't know how they're getting away with it, because it's a big sort of finance company. The salary is completely different.
Is that just because it's male and female?
Yeah.
It's still going on.
Well, I'm sure they
a huge
put something around it and say, look, it's not because of that, it's something else. But obviously she can't take it up because she's not meant to know. Yeah. But it's a naughty secretary, actually. You shouldn't really be giving away confidential information.
But it just goes to show, and it still goes on, and it's not right.
It does.
It's not fair.
It does.
I don't understand that.
I know.
There you are.
Got to fight for our rights, Helena.
We have to. We've all got to fight for our rights. But International Women's Day.
Yes, celebrating all things women. Thank you so much for the news.
Thank you very much.
And we'll see you again next time. Okay, so after the break, we will be speaking to HR Associate Maria Asemenah and also watching a video from Time to Change on what people with mental health illnesses can feel like sometimes.
Don't forget to subscribe to the Chrissy B Show, always aiming to show you the happier side of life. You can find us on YouTube, Facebook and Twitter.
Welcome back to today's show. Now, before we speak to our professional Maria Asemenah, let's take a look at different types of discrimination.
Types of discrimination. Discrimination can come in many forms. If you are being discriminated against based on your age, gender reassignment, race, religion, disability, marriage, civil partnership, or sexual orientation, this is direct discrimination. Indirect discrimination occurs when a rule or policy is introduced that puts a certain group of people at a disadvantage. The Equality Act, which was introduced in 2010, protects you from being discriminated against in these circumstances. However, there are instances where some of these are justifiable. For example, health and safety purposes. Harassment and sexual harassment are also types of discrimination. Harassment is any behaviour which you find offensive or makes you feel intimidated or humiliated. Examples include spoken or written words of abuse, offensive emails, physical gestures and jokes. This can extend to sexual harassment, where sexual comments, jokes, unwelcome sexual advances are made, or where emails with a sexual content are sent. If you are treated less favourably after rejecting or complaining about this sort of behaviour, this would also classify as discrimination. If you have a disability, you can also experience discrimination if you are not permitted to make reasonable adjustments which are connected to your disability. For example, the need for regular rest breaks or toilet breaks, a restricted diet, difficulties in using public transport, the need for regular hospital appointments, the need for specialist computer equipment, or a quiet working environment. If you find you are being discriminated against, you should seek advice as soon as possible to find out how you can respond appropriately, but also how you can protect yourself.
Okay, so we are going to get some expert advice from HR Associate Maria Asemenah, who's back with us. Hello.
Hi.
How are you, my love?
I'm good, thank you. How are you?
I'm good, thank you. So good to have you back on the show.
Thank you for the invite.
So we're going to be talking about things from a different angle today. Now, I don't normally read questions off my iPad because I like to have a conversation, but because the questions are quite specific, I want to make sure that I ask everything that's here, because I think every single question is very, very important. So we are going to be concentrating on this part about discrimination against people with mental health issues and how people that maybe that are depressed or have another condition, how they cope in the workplace. So my first question is, what would you say are the myths or the little known facts concerning mental illness in the workplace, would you say?
I think probably one of the biggest myths to start with is just how rare people believe mental illness to actually be. So figures actually show that 1 in 4 people in any given year will suffer from some type of mental illness. So mental illness is a really broad category. It covers depression, anxiety, stress, more well-known conditions such as bipolar disorder or psychosis. Those are more well-known mental illnesses, but the ones that I mentioned before, like depression, anxiety, those are also classified as mental illnesses. Another myth is that people with those conditions aren't able to work. Whereas in actual fact, if they're given the right support, they are able to be an active member of the workplace.
Well, I managed to work really well, even though I did have depression. And I never I didn't tell my boss what was going on, but I think it kind of work in a sense distracted me a bit. So when I was there, it's sort of my mind was busy. So even though I was still feeling low, but it wasn't something that kind of affected what I was doing, because I was still very sort of meticulous in my work and I wanted to, you know, do really well. Yeah. So that is definitely a myth I can say on my part, you know.
Yeah.
So.
And so going back to the figure about 1 in 4 people actually having, you know, some type of mental illness, there is a very strong possibility, going to your case, that we may all be working with someone who is suffering from some type of mental illness, but we will obviously discuss more about stigma, but for a multitude of reasons, they don't feel like they're able to actually discuss it with work colleagues or their boss, for instance. So it is quite a common thing.
Are there any more myths? Or are those the main ones? I've got another question here anyway for you.
Yeah, those are the main myths, I would guess.
Now, in terms of legal protection for people that are going through some kind of mental illness, in case they are if they do sort of open up about what they're going through, or if, say, for example, a work colleague witnesses something and then they start to be harassed, they start to be discriminated against, what can be done?
So the Equality Act is there precisely for protecting people from discrimination. So mental illness is considered mental impairment, so that is classified under a disability. So if someone, I'll give you an example, someone is suffering from depression and they report to their boss that as a result of how they're feeling, they feel harassed or victimized or alienated in some way. If that is in relation to the condition that they have, that would be considered unlawful.
Okay. And then what then can be done about that?
So there are a number of steps. Again, I always recommend trying to resolve any problem internally, going through the proper company procedures before you look at trying to go externally and, you know, perhaps raising a claim at an employment tribunal. But there is protection from harassment and discrimination in relation to a mental illness.
It's kind of tough, because I can imagine someone that is going through this kind of issue, it's like kind of extra stress when you start going down that route, but then if you don't do anything, it could get worse. So it's a tricky decision, I suppose, for someone that is, I think you have to be prepared for what you're going to do if you are going to go down that road. When you agree. Another
sad thing in relation to mental illness is that because many people don't feel like they're able to open up about it, they often suffer alone. So even, you know, normal support networks such as friends and family, some people with mental illnesses do find themselves shunned, ignored, some even suffer abuse. So it is, I guess, understandable why some people do choose to keep it either to themselves or hide it. But the hope now, particularly in the media, there's a really big push for mental illness to not be stigmatized and for people to feel comfortable discussing their condition with people around them, and for other people to feel comfortable having those conversations. So I think it's a two-way process. People don't feel comfortable speaking out, and sometimes people on the receiving end don't quite know what to say. They're uncomfortable. They feel a little bit awkward.
It's about education, isn't it?
I believe so, yeah.
It really is, because sometimes we sort of accuse people of being ignorant, but then we need to educate those people to say, actually, this is what it's like. We can talk about it. So I think that's really important. So I have another question here for you. It says here, can you tell us what workplace wellness is and the significance for psychological health?
Yeah, absolutely. So if we look at work, it's a vital part of our lives. It provides the opportunity for positive social interaction, going to work, being around our colleagues, sharing, you know, our life, what's going on in our lives, kind of.
We spend most of our time with our work colleagues. We spend a lot of time there. So family sometimes. Good work,
I kind of can classify it good and bad work. Does provide the opportunity for positive social interaction. So that can have a really positive effect on someone's well-being, psychological well-being. It can make us feel happy, it can make us feel part of a group. Belonging is a really big part of just being an everyday normal human being. You want to feel like you belong to different groups. Conversely, bad work where you're treated unfairly, where you're bullied, you feel harassed, has a negative impact, as you would expect. So workplace well-being is all about promoting and having a positive culture where employees feel that they can, you know, be part of the team, feel comfortable being at work, and managers, the employee culture should really promote a positive environment.
Do you think a lot needs to be done in that respect in many companies then? Because it sounds lovely.
Yeah.
It sounds lovely, but I wonder how many sort of companies are actually investing in that, because that's so important.
Yeah,
because
absolutely.
happy worker will produce much more.
Absolutely. There are strong links between productivity and, you know, for instance, presenteeism is the opposite effect. So if someone isn't performing to their optimal level, so for instance someone is unwell but they're still in the office and they're not actually able to perform to their optimum level, that's what's known as presenteeism. So it's low productivity and it has an impact on the organisation, and that ultimately feeds into the economy, and it costs the UK economy a huge amount each year.
So it's huge impact, isn't it? Really?
It does have a huge impact. Yeah.
We're going to go to a quick break, but we do have a few more questions that we really need your expert advice on, Maria. So please stay with us and stay tuned, because we have more after this break.
Don't forget to subscribe to the Chrissy B Show, always aiming to show you the happier side of life. You can find us on YouTube, Facebook and Twitter.
Welcome back to the show. So today we're discussing mental health, stigma and discrimination in the workplace. So now, before we carry on talking to our expert, Maria Asemenah, let's take a look at this video of what mental health stigma feels like.
I was first diagnosed when I was 16, so it was just after my 16th birthday. I was diagnosed with depression. At the time it was quite severe.
I was diagnosed with anxiety and depression when I was about 17, 18, going through my last year of school.
I was diagnosed with obsessive compulsive disorder when I was 15.
I went to a doctor and a month later they diagnosed me with depression and put me on some antidepressants.
I developed depression when I was about 15.
I have suffered from depression, anxiety and post-traumatic stress disorder.
I think the main kind of stigma is, well, what's wrong with you? You've got the perfect life, why wouldn't you be happy? And just mainly people thinking it's a choice to be depressed. Nobody in the world would choose to feel depressed and isolated and completely horrible about themselves. So for someone to say or suggest that it's your fault, it's pretty horrible, because then you kind of start blaming yourself and then it just escalates.
Shortly after I was diagnosed, I experienced a bit of discrimination at school. One of the teachers just didn't quite understand. I really do feel like she viewed me as kind of weak or like making it up, or she just didn't take it as seriously. That was really difficult for me, because especially in the school environment, and they say it kind of in front of the whole class, it does impact you.
You kind of experience a lot of stigma and discrimination, not necessarily personally, but just out kind of in the community and out when people are talking, and just kind of wry comments people make, like kind of schizo or lunatic, etc. Although they're not meant to harm anyone particularly, they can really affect someone who's trying to cope with their own little crisis, and it does make a massive impact to them if they look round and see people kind of treating them in this way.
When I was writing my CV, and I'd written obviously that I had been in a period in a mental hospital and stuff like that, so that was on my CV, and I was told that was stupid, you know, and people wouldn't take me on because of that. And actually, I actually got a job when I'd first written my CV, but they'd picked up on that and they sort of took me inside and said, "Will you show up?"
I first experienced stigma when I was 12 years old, when I was first referred to the Child and Adolescent Mental Health Services. and my counsellor put it down to teenage angst and hormones, and it completely put me off trying to seek help for quite a long time.
When people were stigmatising me, I felt quite sad, and I also panicked me more, so it made my OCD worse because I realised that people were picking up on the things that I was doing, people commenting about them, and also people were avoiding me because I was doing these things.
Something to think about, definitely. So guys, let's keep talking about mental health issues, right? It's very important. So Maria, we have some more questions for you. Now this time we're going to be speaking about on the side of managers and employers, what they can do. So what is the actual role of a line manager when it comes to mental health in the workplace?
Yeah, a good line manager should be looking out for any early signs that there may be either we couldn't really say that they can detect an actual mental health condition, but anything in an employee's change in behaviour, anything that doesn't quite seem normal or how they normally are in the workplace. And a line manager's role is really important. They are instrumental in the everyday running of a team. They can help in terms of alleviating any pressure on a said individual. So the role of a manager cannot be, underestimated.
It's quite a difficult, I think, role for someone that is maybe dealing with an employee, because on the one hand, you've got targets that you need to reach, and there's that thing, well, is this person going to, that's one of the myths, isn't it? But maybe that's in the back of someone's mind. Is this person going to be able to do this work properly? Because I've got deadlines I have to meet. So it's kind of a tricky situation, because you want to support someone, but at the same time, you've also got that pressure on you that you have to, you can't take any time out to do this because you have to look after, your targets to reach. It's kind of difficult, isn't it?
It is. And to be clear as well, some environments are by nature high pressure. So I'm not by any kind of measure recommending that managers just say, oh, if you're feeling a bit stressed, you don't have to. It's not about doing that. It's about distinguishing and recognizing anything that doesn't really seem normal. So everyone has a different kind of stress and pressure threshold. And it's about recognizing when someone is going beyond what we would consider a good level of stress. A good amount of pressure sometimes helps us to be able to perform our roles at a satisfactory level. Sometimes people thrive on pressure, but going beyond that is where someone might either reach their breaking point, or they find that it just isn't sustainable.
So that's where obviously the line manager has to step in and do something.
So I think having a conversation to have a better understanding of whether or not someone is, under too much pressure but they can handle it, or if it's an indication that they may be suffering from some type of mental illness, is really important. And by having that conversation, by being close with one's employees, that's how a line manager is going to be able to distinguish between the two.
And hopefully the employee will open up at that point, because sometimes maybe they're afraid to, they don't want to tell their manager because they think, oh, maybe it will affect my promotion or that I really want. It's kind of hard. Yeah,
and the role of the line manager, to be clear, isn't to be a counsellor or to be a company doctor. So they are still going to need to maintain that professional boundary. They can't pry into people's personal lives. They can have respectful conversations, but they need to also maintain that distance.
Okay. All right. So leave that to the professionals then, professional counsellors. And obviously the manager can also refer the employee for counselling?
Yeah, so most organisations will have what's known as an employee assistance programme. And they're there especially to deal with any conversations that employees don't feel comfortable having with their line managers. They're effectively counsellors internally.
All right, Maria, we've got a couple of minutes left. So I just want to ask you one final question. If an employee does need to go on sick leave regarding a mental health issue, what would a manager do in that respect? How would they support them?
Yeah, so A manager can keep in contact with the employee. That amount of contact will depend on the reason that the person is out sick, but figures actually show that employees, 4 out of 5 employees on long-term sickness leave, are more likely to return to their role if it's a physical condition that they're out of the office for, than a mental illness condition. And this again can be down to a number of reasons, but a manager can absolutely keep in contact. That contact should be monitored so that it's not too much to be considered obtrusive, or it's not too infrequent that an employee doesn't feel that they actually care.
Once a week or something, would you say? Or was that too much?
So it's to be determined, and it's very much case by case.
Right.
Probably once a week would probably seem to be
a bit much,
but
yeah,
it would very much depend on the reason that someone's out, and that can be, so guidance can always be given by HR. So, you know, in such a situation, that would be handled by HR and the line manager. So if ever a line manager isn't quite sure, you know, how much contact, what contact to have with their employee, they can also always seek advice from HR.
Okay, and what about returning to work as well? What
so
kind of support?
Returning to work is really important. A lot of planning needs to go into deciding how to reintegrate someone back into the workplace. And a good action plan is going to make the difference between someone being able to resettle into their role and not being able to.
Right.
So, for instance, what the messaging will be to colleagues, something like that needs to be led from the employee themselves. So a manager should never really have a conversation about another employee being out on sickness leave unless that's been discussed and what to be said has been confirmed by the employee themselves. Looking at their workload. So someone who's been out on long-term sickness leave shouldn't come back to a huge backlog of work. That's going to perhaps add additional stress to their return. So small measures such as a good plan, thinking about messaging, managing their workload, thinking about reasonable adjustments. That's a big part of reintegrating someone into the office.
Maria, it's been an absolute pleasure. Thank you so much for the great advice as usual. Thank you. Hope to see you again soon.
Yeah,
all right. So guys, don't go away, because after the break, I'll be joined by Coach Chris Brown, and we'll be giving you some advice about what to do if you're feeling down because you're being discriminated against, or perhaps, you know, you're still feeling the after effects of being discriminated against in the past. So don't go away.
Don't forget to subscribe to the Chrissy B Show, always aiming to show you the happier side of life. You can find us on YouTube, Facebook and Twitter.
Welcome back to the show. So now I'm with Coach Chris Brown. Hello.
Hi, Chrissy. How's it going?
I'm good. How are you?
Very well, thanks. Very well. Very informative show.
It has been, hasn't it? Yeah, it's really, really handy. Sorry, that's my tissue, by the way, I'm putting there. Anyway, so we're going to be speaking about what to do if someone feels a bit down, if they've been discriminated against in the past or currently, because I think it's very important to sort of speak about this and not let it get to you, because people can feel even worse because of certain issues. Have you ever been discriminated against?
Discrimination, I could think of a few times in the past when I was discriminated. The workplace one, and also on a personal level. Let me just give you the personal one every day. Okay. This is funny because it's not funny, but it's just this is about January or so. I was in a main department store with my wife. Okay, and she started looking at shoes, and as you know, you go look at shoes, it takes a little while. So what I did was, I said, "I'll go." Yeah, discrimination. I went and sit down within there. I went and sit down in this store, and when I sat down, there was a woman sitting there, and she was sitting there with a bag, and she saw me, she looked at me, and she went like this, and put it under her bag. Now, if that's not direct discrimination, what is it? But do you know what? This woman, myself, we actually ended up having a chat about it because my wife came over after, and I actually said, this is what's happened to her. We had a chat about it. She started to apologise profusely, and then she explained why she was like that before and what has happened before. Okay. It wasn't my fault, but it's her point of view of how she saw me. And talking about the workplace one, I deliver workshops on equality and diversity as well. Very well-known company, we'll leave names out and all that. Went to deliver this workshop on equality and diversity, and this company actually does that work, monitoring other places. Walked in there, right from the doorway, security just didn't want to know, and he said,
Really?
stand over there and wait over there, as if like, but then when the director came down and saw, he realised what he did, and it just showed why the work was actually needed in this company. We actually talk about it instead. So there's discrimination on many levels, you know,
There are.
as we just talked about a while ago.
I mean, I think it's not one of the points actually we were going to speak about, but sometimes even sort of having a laugh about it can kind of help alleviate some of maybe what you're feeling, because it's like, oh, you know, silly people, they're just like, just what I mean. Sometimes we can tend to take it too seriously. Obviously, there are times when you need to do something and it is serious and it's not on. But there's other times when, do you know what, I'm not even going to let it get to me. Yeah, it's
you can't
like,
change the world. That's their thinking at the end of the day. But like you said, you laugh at it. That's what I said when we started. And I said, well, when my wife said, we laughed at the situation because I thought, well, hang on, you know, what do I? Wasn't projecting to her at the end of the day.
That's true. When I remember being bullied at school, and I was, you know, discriminated against because I kind of looked different from everyone because I was from a very strict Greek family.
Right.
And I think most of the kids, I think there was one other Greek person or two other Greek people in the whole school. Right. So I kind of stuck out of the way I dressed because, you know, I wasn't allowed to sort of be fashionable, and I was wearing these sort of shoes that my uncle made me in Cyprus and stuff. So I got noticed basically, and I used to get bullied because of that.
Right.
And people saying to me, "I'll go back to your own country," even though I was actually born in England.
Right.
So that kind of felt a bit strange for me. So I experienced it on that level, but as I got older, it kind of stopped. I just experienced it at school, and that was it. Once I went to college and uni, then I didn't experience anything else after that. But you know, it happens, and you know, we have to learn to deal with it. But let's go through our points, Chris, because we have a few things. So if you are being discriminated against, number one, it's not a reflection of you. Okay, so it's a reflection of them. It's a reflection of the other people. So it's their problem. So you have to kind of take that kind of responsibility off yourself and remember, look, they're being ignorant. They're the ones at fault. So it's nothing to do with you being wrong or you being weird or different. It's the other person's problem. And I think it's very important to remember that.
It's very important because sometimes people walk away from a situation and start feeling insecure, feeling it's about me, I'm this, I'm that. And just as you said, it's not, you know, it's about the other person.
And sometimes, as I was saying to Maria earlier, I think we also have a responsibility to educate people where it's not done in a cruel way, in an intentional way. Maybe the person just makes a silly comment about something, but it is discrimination or it is stigma. Then you can say, okay, look, let me sit you down and explain something to you, and then educate the person, because maybe they genuinely don't realise. They don't realise what they've said, or they don't realise how they've made a person feel. And you know, I include myself in that, because sometimes there's some shows that I do, and I'm like, oh, should I ask that question? Is that question going to be rude? But then I thought, you know what? Let me just ask anyway, and I'll get corrected if anything. Even though it's a bit embarrassing on TV, but at least I'll be educated. And I think it's important to ask the questions that, you know, normal everyday people have, because then that's the way change will happen.
I actually think it's really good, Chrissy, that you actually said sometimes ourselves, because we always look at somebody else and say they're discriminating, this person's discriminating. But yes, we're not aware ourselves, and we got to know at the end of the day that maybe we discriminate in ways, whichever way it comes out, we've got to think about ourselves as well.
I mean, there was something that one of the young guys on the video said, and he said sometimes it's not even a direct comment to a person, but if someone's in a group and they say something, oh, you schizo or something, which one of us hasn't said things like that before? But then you don't think, oh, well, actually, someone that's going through a mental health issue hears that, and it makes them feel worse.
The effects of it.
So sometimes we say things in a jokey way, even without realising. So it's really important. But let me get on to the next point, which is to speak up. So if you do keep hearing negative things, and it's something that's starting to affect you, calmly, you know, speak to the person. Like I said before, try speaking to the person face to face first of all, and just make them aware of their comment, because that can also lead to change. But then if it's something more serious, like we spoke about with Maria earlier, then you do need to go obviously through the correct procedures if it's a workplace issue.
If it's workplace issues, you've got the employment tribunal. Also, you could take out grievances as well. But you've got to think, is it going to serve my circumstances right now in doing that? Because you've got to work in that place still. But I'm not saying ignore it. You've got to stand for what's right.
You've got to do it, right. Number 3, this one's an important one, to invest in yourself. So learn to love yourself, because sometimes when negative comments are made or people say negative things about you, and it kind of hits you really quickly, or it makes you feel really bad quickly, for some reason it affects you so much, possibly it's because you're not investing enough in yourself, in your hobbies, in your dreams, in your confidence, building up that confidence within yourself. Because I think sometimes the more confident we are, the less these comments kind of hurt. Yeah.
They bounce off. If it's about your self-esteem. If you're sure of yourself, somebody says something, you can just bounce back like that and let it go, or probably laugh it off at the end of the day. But if you don't, it's going to seep inside, and it's going to start eating away at you gradually. So yeah, be able to deal with it.
Definitely. And number 4, focus on your abilities rather than what you are not good at. So this is another one, again, that will actually build your confidence, because we all have things that we're really good at and we have things that we're not so great at. And maybe someone's picked up on something that maybe you're not so good at, but don't worry about that. Okay, you can improve, but concentrate on what you are. You have a talent, you have things, maybe you're friendly with people, maybe you make people laugh, you have something about you that's really positive. So make sure you invest in that and concentrate on that rather than what you don't have.
And sometimes, because you are actually good at that, sometimes people actually do pick at that instead to try and pull that away.
That's
so you've got to be very aware of that as well and stand strong.
That's a very good point, actually. Yeah. Very good. I hope you guys got what you just said. Yeah. And number 5, also, you should build positive relationships. So try to associate with people that are positive, that say good things, that say positive things. And if you find that, you know, there are those kind of friends that put you down in a jokey way sometimes, but really they mean it, you have to really kind of be careful of that. Change your friends. Change your social circle. It's not wrong to do that. You have to look after your well-being, your mental health. And if there's people around you that are very negative all the time, and even might not be talking about you, but talking about other people, just think about changing your circle. And
that's a case of, back to the individual, we're talking a lot about insecurities. The sort of person that will actually pick those things out, it's because it's what they're lacking inside themselves. So they want to see you on that same level as well. Carry on.
Okay. And the last point that we're going to talk about is to be nice to others. So if you're a caring and supportive person, you know, you genuinely care about the people around you, that means you're more likely to get a positive response from them as well. It's a bit of give and take, isn't it? So you put out something positive, you're more likely to get something positive back from people. So don't underestimate the power of being nice, because it really helps.
It's important, you know, a smile. You walk down the road, you smile at someone, you invest, they smile back. Starts your day off great at the end of the day. Just saying morning to somebody makes all the difference, doesn't it? You always get the odd one that's looking and thinking, are you crazy? You know, is it morning? Yeah, but it's worth it.
Yeah,
you know?
Definitely.
Invest.
Thank you very much, Coach Chris Brown.
Pleasure,
We're going to leave it there today. So we have reached the end of the programme. But remember, if you are going through a mental health issue and you need to talk about it, there are, you know, you're not alone. There are lots and lots of people going through the same thing as you, or have been through the same thing as you and are completely recovered, like myself. So, you know, don't feel afraid to talk about it. Speak about it when you feel comfortable. There's lots of professionals, lots of charities that can help. Open up to a friend if you need to. Whatever it is, just don't keep it inside and think that that's the end of your life or your future is ruined, because it's just not true. There's always recovery. There's always help for you out there. So if you'd like to email me, you can do so on chris@chrissybshow.tv. And if you want more information about the programme and our guest today, you can visit the website chrissybshow.tv. Bye for now.